Hello and welcome to Unit 5 in our Early Latin American History course. In this unit, we're going to build on the things that we were talking about in Unit 4, primarily the indigenous communities and the African communities throughout Latin America. We're going to look how those things intersected with different categories of class and gender as well. So of course, Unit 4 covered race and ethnicity. This time around, we're going to look at religion along with class and gender. We're going to think about how the Catholic Church influenced norms about what proper behavior was, as well as how the Catholic Church and Spanish colonial legal standards set the terms for a patriarchal society in which men held a lot of power and authority in their households. Their honor was based on their ability to essentially control their wife and their children, and women's honor was based on their ability to keep a home and keep a low profile in public. Now, all of that said, um, the Spanish Empire and Spanish law was much more permissive than either British or French colonial law toward women. And what I mean by that, maybe permissive isn't the right word, but what I mean by that is that in Spanish law, women had the right to bring suits against even abusive husbands. They had the right to inherit property or to maintain their own possession of their property that they brought into a marriage. They had certain rights to leave last wills and testaments that could even challenge those of their husbands if there were disputes between them during their lives. And so the archives in the Spanish Americas from the colonial period are rich with very interesting stories about how family life was negotiated in the context of the categories that we're going to be talking about during this unit, in terms of the way, again, that religion, gender, and class impacted a person's place in society. And what I want to do here with this introduction is just tell you a story about a woman and her mother in Ciudad Chihuahua in the 1700s. So in the early 1700s, Chihuahua was founded. It was initially a mining town, but it quickly became a thriving trade center, or like a way station on the Camino Real between Mexico City and Santa Fe. In Ciudad Chihuahua, there was this mother, Juana de Cobos, and her daughter, Mariana Munoz, who lived together with their kind of extended family. Both of them had been married previously, or I should say, were married, but they lived apart from their husbands. They took their children, they lived together as women, children, grandchildren. And Juana, the matriarch or the kind of grandmother, she owned a bakery and she supported them financially. One of her sons was able to do the necessary paperwork that she needed because she was illiterate, but she was able to make a good living for herself and her children, including Mariana. The reason I bring up those two names, of course, there was a much larger family that lived there with Juana, but the reason I bring up those two names is that they show up in the judicial record. So apparently, one evening, Mariana was walking home at dusk, and she passed the home of a prominent widow woman in town whose name was Josefa Garcia. Now, Josefa Garcia was engaged to be married to a peninsular a merchant who had been born in Spain, I should say, whose name was Miguel Rico. Now, as Mariana walked by the house that evening, Miguel was standing outside and he started to harass her verbally from a distance. He noticed her clothes and he said, "Oh, you must be very sexually permissive, or you must be a prostitute or something in order to have those kinds of clothes, that good of stuff." And so she shot back some equally barbed insults at him. And even a little bit later, her mother Juana, after hearing about the situation, went over to the home of Josefa and told her off as well. A few days later, Josefa Garcia filed a suit against Juana de Cobos and her daughter Mariana Munoz for having instigated a scandalous and salacious series of insults against her and her betrothed. And the case went through the court, and it was very clear that the court was biased against the two women who lived outside of the norms of patriarchy and honor in colonial society. The court ruled firmly against them, required that they move their bakery and their home to the other side of the city so that they wouldn't come in contact with Josefa and her by then husband Miguel. So again, that story is kind of telling because it shows us that women were able to step outside of the bonds, which again, as we hear them described in history books and other places, the bonds of patriarchy and honor seem like they would have very strictly shaped people's lives. And that could be the case at some times, but there was also a lot of room for these women to push back against the norms, not follow what was expected of them necessarily, and create a space of freedom and difference for themselves. All of that said, interestingly, Juana de Cobos was her ethnicity is something of a question mark in these colonial documents. Sometimes she's referred to as a mestiza. Sometimes she was able to pass as an español or an española, meaning that her skin tone was such that some people took her for being of pure or mostly pure Spanish descent. And as we look at the casta paintings, this unit, you'll kind of get a better sense of what all of that means. So she could pass for that, even to the extent that she was sometimes called Doña, which is a respectful and honorific title. She was a successful businesswoman with her bakery, kind of in a line of work that was, if not acceptable for women to be doing in the public sphere, more acceptable than if she were to have tried to have been a merchant or something like that, for example. And so I bring all of this up again just to underscore the fact that yes, her and her daughter were able to kind of transgress the limits of patriarchy and honor in their society, but her appearance and her ability to claim that Española title was also something that may have contributed to her ability to do that. You know, had she had been mestizo very clearly, or categorized as India or mulata, or any of those other categories, it's likely that she would not have been able to overcome the categories in the ways that she has. So hopefully that story was interesting to you, but I think that it helps complicate the stories that we're going to read this unit about those issues, again, of patriarchy and honor, and defining deviancy in colonial society. Please let me know, as always, if you have any questions as we work through this unit, and I hope that you enjoy Unit 5.